Long time no see. You want to watch me paint some furniture? Hello everyone, I've got another video for y'all. A while back, I went to an estate sale and they had this dresser and this armoire available. The armoire was $65, the dresser was $85. It has these two mirrors, but I'm not going to be messing with them with this project. $150 for two pieces of vintage furniture is a great price, so I brought them back to my paint booth to be refinished. Other than your typical wear and tear and being a little dirty, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this furniture. First thing I do when I get started is remove all of the hardware, including handles, knobs, hinges. That way there's nothing in the way whenever I'm trying to get my work done. You can see this type of hardware comes in 4 pieces, so there'll be a lot to keep up with. I like to put them in these plastic bins to keep everything organized. Since I'm working on 2 pieces for this project, I'll keep the hardware in 2 separate containers. That way the hardware doesn't get mixed up. For the hinges, I'll actually mark them so that they get put back in the same place, so I don't have to worry about the doors not shutting correctly whenever they're reinstalled. It turns out that this bottom hinge on the left door has a screw that's totally stripped out. I'm going to address that here in a minute. For the time being, I decided that I'd just remove the hinges off of the body and take them off of the door later. Now that I've got all the hardware taken off, I'm going to go ahead and take care of the stripped screw. As you can see, not only is the screw stripped, but it's missing the whole head. There's no way I'm going to be able to use a screw extractor with this, so I found out a different method. What I ended up doing is buying a set of these plug cutters that are normally used with a drill press. I'll have a link to these in the description along with the other products that I'm using in this video. The idea is to core out the wood around the screw just deep enough to allow you to get some pliers in there and remove the screw. You won't be able to use this tool directly against the wood because it likes to travel, so I use the same tool to core out a hole in this piece of wood to act as a guide. Then I used the guide to get the hole started, and after that I was able to do it by hand. Obviously, I'm not trying to drill all the way through the door. I'm just trying to get enough of the wood out so I can grab the screw and pull it out. Once the wood surrounding the screw was gone, I was able to reach in with my handy dandy Leatherman here, give it a few turns and pull it right out. The next thing that needs to be done is to plug the hole. I got a wooden dowel in the same size, applied some wood glue to it, hammered it in, and then used a small saw to cut it off. Finally, I sanded everything smooth and set it aside to dry while I work on the rest of the project. By the time I'm ready to remount the doors, this will all be dry and I'll have some nice solid wood to put the new screw into. With all that out of the way, I'm finally ready to start cleaning this dresser. You always want to make sure to clean your furniture before you paint it so that you can get rid of any dirt and grime that'll interfere with your paint finish. I usually use trisodium phosphate or TSP. A while back I got this TSP substitute that's safer for the environment and it seems like it works just as good. I add the TSP to about a gallon of warm water, stir it up, and then it's ready to go. To be able to get into all of the intricate details, I'm going to be using this dish brush dipped in the TSP, then I'll come back and wipe it off with a damp cloth to get rid of any extra residue. lot of times old dressers like this are pretty filthy on the inside, so I'll take a vacuum out all of the dust, and then come back with a damp rag to get the leftover dust so everything looks good as new. Now that everything has been cleaned, it's time to start sanding. I like to use 120 or 220 grit sandpaper. It just depends on what I have available. Whenever I'm sanding, I'm not trying to go all the way down to the wood. I'm just trying to scuff up the surface. This roughs up the surface a little bit and allows the paint to adhere a lot better. For small scratches like this, instead of using wood filler, I'll tend to use my sander and feather out the damage so it's nice and smooth. After I've sanded the larger areas with the orbital sander, I'll use my detail sander to take care of the smaller areas. Once the dresser is all sanded, I've got to take care of the drawers. I started off using my detail sander to get the majority of the work done. I really wanted to make sure that the paint adhered well, so I got in there by hand with some sandpaper and took care of the rest. Most of the intricate details on this dresser are actually plastic, so I wanted to make sure that they were scuffed up a little bit. Now that I've got the dresser fully sanded, I've got to make sure I do the same process to the armoire. I'm not going to make y'all watch the sanding process again, but you can see that I've sanded outside, inside, and the doors. Once I'm done sanding everything, I'll come back and dust everything off, then use a damp rag to make sure I get the last of the dust. The majority of the prep work is done. The last thing to do is to apply some primer. There's tons of different ways to do this. I like to use flat white spray paint. This serves two purposes. The primer creates an additional bonding surface for the paint to adhere to, and it also seals in wood bleeds. Wood bleeds are stains that show up in your paint after you paint it over wood. It's the tannins in the wood or the oil in the original wood stain interacting with the water-based paint. So since I'm trying to get that extra bonding surface and trying to seal bleeds, I just prefer to use spray paint. When I'm priming with spray paint, I apply 2 light coats, and that's usually enough to do the trick. For the paint, I'm going to be using some Valspar Signature. This is a water-based paint. I actually found this at Lowe's on the mist tint shelf. This is return paint that they sell for $9. The color is Crocodile Dreams. The sheen of this paint is Eggshell, and I usually don't get it because stain doesn't interact well with it whenever I'm glazing. So I added a few ounces of this semi-gloss polyurethane in hopes to bring the sheen up a little bit so it'd be easier to work with later on when I'm glazing. Once I've got my sprayer primed, I'm ready to paint. This color covered really well. I ended up only needing to do 2 coats. It's over 100 degrees here right now, so I'll let it dry for about 30 minutes and it'll be ready for another coat. For those wondering what sprayer I'm using, this is a Graco Project Painter Plus. I'll put a link to it in the description. This is what everything looks like after the first coat. As I said before, it's real hot, so it only takes about 30 minutes to dry. The process for the second coat is the same as the first, so I'll speed this up. For those wondering how I paint the edges of the drawers, I pull the drawers out and stagger them, paint the tops, and then stagger them in a different manner so that I can get to the sides. Sometimes a little bit of overspray gets in there or on the sides, but it's not that big of a deal. Most of my painting is done, but the last thing I need to get is this area underneath the drawers. I've taken all the drawers out because after this I'm going to start glazing the body. While glazing, I'll be wearing these gloves because it's super messy. The stain I'm using to glaze is Minwax's Dark Walnut. I apply it using these disposable chip brushes. Right after applying it, I'll wipe it off with a rag until I get the texture that I want. If you're glazing with stain, it's a good idea to work in sections because it likes to dry up real fast. As I mentioned before, I've never had a good experience trying to use wood stain over eggshell due to the fact that it's more porous and it soaks the stain up more. I had hoped that adding the poly would help a little bit, and it did, but it was still soaking up a lot of the stain. One of the good things about using wood stain to glaze is that it's oil based. So if you apply your first layer and mess up, you can come back and apply more stain and it'll re-wet the old layer and you have unlimited tries. Since I was having some trouble getting the stain to work with the eggshell paint, I had to go at it multiple times until I got it right. As you can see here, the stain is uneven. The right side is dark and the left side is lighter and it looks real streaky. Since I wasn't happy with this finish, I decided to go at it again and give it another try. It looks a little better, but I was still having some issues with the stain soaking up too much, so I went at it one last time. This time around I got it right. I'm happy with this. Now I can start glazing the body. After the glazing on the body is finished, I'll glaze the drawers one by one. It's really important when you're glazing drawers to make sure that the tone matches the body and that all of the other drawers match each other also. To make sure that everything matches, I'll glaze the drawers one by one, then I place the drawer inside the body and give it a final wipe down to make sure that everything matches. After the glazing on the dresser was finished, I moved on to the armoire to repeat the same process. Here's what the dresser and armoire look like after the glazing is completed. It was a ton of work, which I'm obviously going to charge for, but now all that's left to do is top coat it with some water-based polyurethane, put the hardware on, and I'm done. To spray my top coat, I'm going to be using the same Graco Magnum Project Painter Plus. For the top coat, I'm using Minwax polyacrylic. All they had was a satin finish and I wanted a semi-gloss, so I bought this smaller can of gloss and just mixed them together and it worked out. Whenever I'm spraying water-based polyurethane, I'll do 2 or 3 thin coats, sand any rough areas with some 320 grit sandpaper, and then for the final coat, I'll apply a thicker wet coat that allows everything to dry really nice and smooth. In between my second and third coat, I received this mask in the mail that I bought not too long ago. I've been needing to get a new respirator for a while, and I wanted to see how these held up compared to a respirator. RZ masks are mesh masks that come with disposable filters. The one thing I was really looking forward to was being able to breathe a little bit easier. This mask has valves to allow your breath to escape so you're not sweating inside the mask. I was only able to use them on this project and mowing my lawn so far, but I'll let y'all know how it goes. As I mentioned earlier, before I do my last coat of polyurethane, I'll hit any rough surfaces with the 320 sanding sponge. This ensures that there aren't any rough marks in the finish after I spray the last coat. I usually have to do this on the top. For the sides, gravity tends to do most of the work. You can see on this last coat, I'm moving my arm a lot slower so I can get a thicker application of the polyurethane. As long as you don't apply too much at once, you don't have to worry about getting any runs, and it'll have a super smooth factory-like finish. After the polyurethane is done drying, I'm ready to put the hardware back on and be done with this project. If y'all remember the bottom left hinge that was stripped out at the beginning of the video, I'm really happy with how the fix turned out. The replacement screw went right in, everything was perfect, and the doors worked flawlessly. And here is the final result. I had a lot of fun with this project, just using a random color that I found on the mist tint shelf. Glazing high detailed pieces like these ones is a lot of work, but it's always worth it. The details really pop. I'm very satisfied with this project. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments. Sorry it's been so long, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure you share this video with anyone you think that might be interested. Like this video, comment on this video, and ring that little bell, and I'll see y'all later.